They say that a year is a long time in anything, and it's safe to say that that rings true in Draft League. And there's one mon that I want to go over today that perfectly encapsulates that. That mon is Tera Zarude. How's it going, guys? And welcome back to the channel. Today, as I mentioned there, we're going to be talking about Tera Zarude and how its structures have changed over the last year and why it's gotten worse. Although I think a lot of people might know this, I still think it's interesting to talk about because there's actually a lot of similarities that can be drawn with, I'm not sure if mistakes is the right term, but in terms of trends of how to approach Zarude, and maybe that isn't quite correct, and how that's being slightly rectified in the current DCL that's going on. So as you can see on your screen, I have this beautiful Excel spreadsheet that I have made. Well, you know, I implied made, I just took a bunch of screenshots of teams here. But we have from DCL 2, DPL Season 9, and DCL 3, with some replays I'd like to go over as well. Anyways, without further ado, let's hop right into the times where Tera Zarude was considered an absolute demon. And those times, of course, are seen as DCL 2. I have that third team there because it's actually a worthwhile discussion, which I'll get back to. But my focus here wants to be on the two teams that were overwhelmingly positive, one of which you've already seen on this channel. That team by Infernal Armory, the Garchomp Tera Zarude Deoxys Speed team, it just was a really high-performing team. Sage was using it a lot of the time, and as we know, Sage is fucking goated. She is her when it comes to SV. And it was just a team that really suited her style. It was incredibly flexible, particularly with that top 4. And you also look at that top 4, and that's just not attainable these days. You could arguably say top 5, but Goldengo is such an interesting case because sometimes it goes really early and sometimes it goes really late. It kind of makes no sense. But I think the best thing that Zarude had on this team was it had ultimate flexibility. A lot of the time it did end up as Wincon, but it could go the breaker route because Garchomp could be the Wincon, or Goldengo could be the Wincon, or Enam could be the Wincon. Or it could be the Wincon because something like Cinderace could break, Goldengo could break, Lapras could break. We've seen Sage do everything with a Lapras. So it was just one of these sorts of teams that it gave Zarude a ton of options and didn't make it feel limited into, right, this is my best mon, and therefore it has to kind of do everything. And Sage used that to her advantage very easily in prep all the time. I could honestly spend an entire different video of how Sage used this team, because this kind of was the team from that DCL. But, you know, I'm not going to bore you with the details. And sure, I did show you the game, the semifinals game against Lucas in the grass type video, so I don't have a game focusing on that. The team beside it was drafted by Phantom Thievals. And this is a prime example of this was carrying over from DPL Season 8, where Zarude plus Iron Valiant was a thing, and they were doing really well. Tera Zarude's performances in DPL 8, the reason I don't have them here is because it was still a relatively divisive mon that people didn't quite know what to think. And it was DCL 2 where name was really put on the map. Ooh, you might have heard that, my bad. But the combination of Iron Valiant plus Zarude was just really difficult to deal with in a prep aspect, especially when you combine that with the bottom half of this team. Lando T just glued everything together by being a reliable rocker and pivot, and the only, well, one or two rockers in this team, but you don't really see rocks along the Sandslash that often. And Galar Slowking was just kind of the everything pivot that could chill your reception out into Kyurem to just do a hell of a lot of work. Or if Alolan Sandslash did come and had a really nice offensive matchup, it was just instant momentum and instant forward progress that this team was making constantly. Also, the threat of webs, which made Zarude even more annoying because it didn't even need to run Trailblaze. It could just run SD sets and have an absolute field day. And yeah, it was more so the success did come from the combination of Valiant plus Zarude, while also having Kyurem there as an additional breaker when required. And I have a game here that was played in week 7 of this DCL season, where Shadow took on TDNT of the Nature's Madmen. You can look at the matchup here, and you can kind of already see where this is going. Zarude looks really strong, as does Kyurem under Snow, especially if it's not choiced. And the pressure that Valiant implies means that Metagross has to be preserved immensely, or Primarina. But the two of them just need to be preserved immensely to not lose to any sort of Valiance. And even then, it could still lose. And TDNT just had no forward progress in this matchup, on paper. And you'll just kind of see the game here. Just to show, it is Tera Steel on the Zarude, and obviously the Teal Pond is Tera Grass. Oh, the Araquanid's also Terra for this team, isn't it? Yeah, it's Terra Electric on the Araquanid. Although I don't think that's relevant. We see a head smash, one-shotting the Araquanid on lead, meaning no webs. But I don't think Shadow cares that much, because now he just gets to click Shadow Ball trying to catch Metagross. Primarina takes 19. Flip turn out by the Primarina on the Slowking, bringing back in the Great Tusk, which is looking like a nuisance. Rocks go up as we see a chilly reception into the Alolan Sandslash, which is revealed to be leftovers. It clicks spin here, knowing that it's probably going to live a headlong rush due to the snow buff, and it duly does. Metagross pivots in here as the Sandslash goes for Ice Cold Crash, which does a grand total of 16, but any damage counts on this thing this game. That EQ means a little bit more, with Heavy Slam picking off the Sandslash. We see the Rude come in here for the first time, as TDNT pivots into Zapdos, with Knockoff doing 50 and getting staticked. We see the Slowking pivot in here, with Zapdos roosting up. And Volt switching out on the Glowking, although I think we kind of know what to expect. Yeah, there's Chilly Reception, to the surprise of nobody. Kyurem comes in, and Kyurem just kind of gets to pick one now. Freeze Dry does 25. Wow, that's max speed FAV Primarina. See the Slowking pivot in on Alluring Voice, as Primarina decides to get the fuck out of there. Going into Metagross, as we see another Chilly Reception. The Zarude comes back in, because it knows that it's applying a ton of pressure. Knockoff only doing 34 this time to Zapdos. We see the Terra on the Volt Switch out into Great Tusk, which loses its Custap Berry here. The Zarude very clearly choice banded. Although, I lie, it's clearly offensive, but not banded, as TDNT decides to get up his Stealth Rock here, with Zarude staying in and clicking Pebble Blizzard to pick it off. And that is a giant threat dead, which could kill basically everything on Shadow's team. Metagross comes out, clicks EQ, which does 68, as Knockoff picks it off. Zapdos comes in to Revenge. We see the Slowking pivot in, Shadow opting to keep the Zarude, kind of implying its boots. The Bicycle Lizard comes in on the Slowking and clicks Shift Gear, which is fun, as the Slowking Chilly Reception's out yet again, going into Kyurem. Primarina pivots in here, taking 28 from Freeze Dry. And the Zarude is sacked at this point to the Alluring Voice. And this allows for the Valiant to come in and kind of run train. Moonblast picks off the Primarina. Ogerpon comes in. We see the Slowking pivot. Not too surprising. On an Ivy Cudgel, as TDNT opts not to Terra here. Goes for U-turn. As we see the Chilly Reception from the Cyclizar into the Kyurem once again, as Freeze Dry is incredibly free. We see the Cyclizar Terra this time into a Ghost type, clicking Double Edge, as Freeze Dry with a crit does 76, and freezes, which is rather unfortunate. And there is a DD from Kyurem, and yes, that is the end of the game. Really unfortunate ending, but what I kind of wanted to show with this sort of game is I did have other games that I could have picked. There was a few good performances with this team by Slick that I could have used, for example, but the main one was also against Lucas, and I don't really want to be using Lucas for two different Tera Zarude replays. It just kind of ruins the credibility a little bit. But this just showed the amount of options that had to be respected at any one time with this team, and that's why this team did well. And then we get to the third team, which was where Zarude was picked up, I believe, at mid-season, and that's why you can see it as the round 1 Mon. And you can kind of see a lot of similarities with this, as you will see. There's a lot of Mons on this that are very similar to other more as Zarude has become a round 1 mon. So that's why you see the Cinderace, that's why you see the Latias. They're kind of the big two here. But the issue is, of course, with round 1 Zarude is that round 2 speed. And this is a problem we'll see quite a bit. And that's what takes us to DPL Season 9. And you look at these 4 teams, and you can kind of see some of the problems. Just to get the 2 on the outside out of the way, neither of these teams did that great. I don't know what the hell that ending on that first one is. Like, yes, Zarude Deoxys Speed I actually like a lot. And then you pair that with Gliscor, Galar, Weezing. You see the Cinderace again, trying to replicate the success of Sage's team above. But your ending is Blissey Dipplin, and you also have a Galar, Weezing, and a Gliscor as your replacements for Garchomp Enam. Yeah, I can kind of see. This is what happens with Team Tours sometimes, is you try to copy a structure that did well in a previous event, and all that ends up happening is you kind of just look a bit ridiculous because there's no... You lose a lot of the options by losing Garchomp on this team. And Tera Zarude can't just become the round 1 mon. And as much as Gliscor can try to be a Garchomp, it just can't be a Garchomp. And yeah, we don't talk about the Blissey Dipplin. What the hell was that? But this is kind of a common issue with Zarude drafts. You kind of look at Zarude drafts and you're like, I don't really know what the thought process was. You also look at this Balio World Tour one, the 4th one here on your screen. And yes, you cover a lot of the boxes that you should with a Tera Zarude draft. Like, you have the Landorus T for pivot, you have the Cinderace for natural speed, we see Goldengo again, we see Latias again for Healing Wish. But once again, it's just kind of another case of a team that you think is kind of lacking in forward progress and also doesn't really allow for Zarude to be multiple different things. It has to be WinCon every single game with this team. And that just makes Zarude a hell of a lot easier to prep for because you know you're prepping for WinCon Zarude rather than, oh, am I going to get done in by, like, Terra Dark Breaker? Or is this thing just going to outlast me just through its sheer utility options? No, you know this thing kind of has to be the WinCon every single game. Unless you're running into, like, Combine Latias, but there's kind of not a lot of teams where Combine Latias succeeds these days. Then you get to the 2 in the middle. And the 2 in the middle are interesting cases because it was the attempts of Double Dark, which I think makes a lot of sense with a mon like Zarude, where having the speed as well as having another option to pressure very similar mons that would need to be used for Zarude checks, I think makes a lot of sense. Zarude Roaring Moon had already been seen. It was used by Habita in the Summer Seasonal. Right. This was before DCL2, making finals in that event before coming up short against PZZ. So this is a core that had been tried before, and you look at this Zarude Roaring Moon team, it looks very Habita-pilled because Habita was partially involved in the building of it. It does have some nice stuff. You see the Galar Slowking again, similar to that Thieves team, replacing Kieran with Baxcalibur, because you have Landorus Eye there, and Terra Mismag for some special offense. And then, obviously, you have the Galar Slowking as a pivot, Ampharos as a cheap mon, and Fortress because holy shit, you need removal, even if it is, unfortunately, a Fortress. Which, you know, we've all seen the L5 videos roasting Fortress. I don't need to go into it again. But it's a team that is definitely the best of the 4 of these, in my opinion. Because it does tick a lot of the boxes, but not in a way that it seems incredibly formulaic. And you do have multiple mons that can be WinCon here. Like, you have WinCon Bax, you have WinCon Mismag, you have WinCon Roaring Moon as options. Heck, WinCon Lando Eye, even though that's kind of very rare these days given its lack of rock polish. But it could maybe do it in very specific circumstances. So, this was the draft that was kind of the most freeing for Zarude. And while the one beside it also kind of does it, I only say kind of because its other WinCons were wearing something down for Battlebond Greninja or a set of Latios. It doesn't quite have the same gravitas. And while, yes, you have an interesting fat backbone between Zapdos, Tinkaton, and Terra Donphan is a serious cook, but it just doesn't quite Like, you look at the other teams, and it was with Greninja Zarude. I really like this as a pairing because you need to keep the Mons healthy, and if it's using Zarude early game, then it's really nice because you can open things up quite easily for like Battle Bond Greninja sweeps late game. But I think what's kind of happened in the last few months is that people just do not see Greninja in the same way that they did about this time last year, where it was not long after the Draft League World Cup, Tera Greninja was kind of popping off, L5 made it look good. You know, that's kind of a theme of SV Draft, is L5 makes something look good, and then the Mon just becomes really popular. But Greninja is definitely not, is seen as far inferior to the other Dark type options that would be in its class. I'm not including Meowscarada in that. Meowscarada absolutely clears it. Although I guess for this event, it was kind of seen on par at Meowscarada, but the gap has become so massive since. I'm more so comparing it to Roaring Moon and to Darkrai. Two Mons that's definitely fallen behind. And you could also, I know it's not a Dark type, but Deoxys Speed falls into the same category. And that's just why you see Greninja not go till like late round 2 these days. Or maybe even early round 3, depending on how a draft is going. So yeah, I think of these 4 DPL teams, you can kind of see the problems immediately. That some of them tried to be too formulaic off of what worked before. Some of them just tried to tick boxes thinking they could get Zarude WinCon to work every single time. And 2 of them had some interesting attempts of ideas, but they just didn't quite come together. And all of that is what leads to the Zarude famous win rate of 27%, with a grand total of 1 win after mid-season. So going into this DCL, it was going to be interesting to see how Zarude was going to be treated. Because the round 1 Zarude debate was a strong one. And especially with the rise of mons like Darkrai and Garchomp into viable round 1 picks, people were wondering would Zarude actually last past, say, pick 9 or 10? The answer to that is it didn't. So this is what we get here. And these teams, you can see it's a mixed bag. Oh, before I forget, I actually have a replay showing. It is with the Zarude Roaring Moon team, showing just kind of some of the issues that that team has. And this is from DPL Season 9 semifinals, where he took on Wagon Fruit. We can just hop into the game here. And as you can see, it is Tera Fairy on the Chi-Yu and Tera Poison on the Alomola, whereas Sean's Zarude here is Tera Ghost. We see a Landers lead into the Meowscarada, which clicks Shadow Ball, interestingly, and reveals to be Life Orb, trying to catch the Fortress on switch in. The Fortress comes in now, as the Triple Axle misses, which sucks because that would have led to presumable Rocky Helmet chip. We see the Shadow Ball doing 45 as Fortress gets up spikes. We see a U-turn from the Meowscarada here, as we do see the Rocky Helmet reveal. So that thing would be basically dead to hazards if it hit, say, if it hit the axle and hit all 3, hypothetically. We see the treads come in here, revealing to be booster speed, as Sean clicks Pain Split with Fortress. Rapid Spin comes off to the surprise of absolutely nobody, as Body Press gets clicked, doing 49 to treads. We see a hard Chi-Yu here as Sean makes a nice play clicking Body Press into it and doing 85. There is a case for maybe he was still better off with the safe play of clicking Rocks again, but I do kind of like the fact that he clicked Body Press here because he needs the damage on Chi-Yu, because Chi-Yu is a giant threat to this 6. We see the pivot into Galar Slowking, as you do, as the Dark Pulse reveals for that to be an AV Slowking. See Surf here as the Alomola comes in, which clicks Flip Turn, going into Yuxi on a Flamethrower that does a grand total of 18. Fortress comes back out here, expecting Rocks. There goes Rocks. As we see Chi-Yu come in here on Spikes, killing the treads. And this turn is just a bit of a disaster, but it's a turn that had to happen because Sean did not want to go back into the Slowking here, because if he loses Slowking, he's definitely in a really tricky position, especially late game if this thing is, say, Flame Charge. So I kind of get the idea of aggressively going into Roaring Moon to try absorb a hit and then force more pressure, because knockoff looks pretty free. Like, I don't think Hands losing its item is not necessarily a bad thing for Sean here, but it's a really nice play from Wagon to kind of call out the aggressive mid play, and losing Roaring Moon is huge. We see Zarude come in here for the first time from Sean, as the Iron Treads get sacked to the Spike. Sean opts the Tera here and click Petal Blizzard. Yuxi comes in, as we see a Landorus pivot on the Psychic Noise. And then, in classic Pardon the Eruption fashion, this is a Choice Scarf Yuxi, and Psychic Noise picks off the Landorus. Choice Scarf, this was a combination that was used quite a lot around Zarude in terms of prep. In terms of you would have a slow pivot on the Zarude setup turn into fast Encore, or sometimes even Scarf Encore. And this was kind of the approach that was taken here. The idea being, if Zarude attempted to set up on Alamola, it would be slow flip turn into Scarf Yuxi Encore. But the Scarf Yuxi picks off the Landorus instead. Excalibur comes in, revealing to be Boots, and clicks SD in front of his Iron Hands. We see an Outrage come off, doing 71, as the Hands reveals to be Helmet, and Close Combat picks it off. So Zarude comes in and forces yet another kill, this time with Petal Blizzard, as the Yuxi comes in once again. We see the Galar Slowking come in on a Psychic Noise, which doesn't matter because regen isn't affected, as the Alamola comes out on a Sludge Bomb, with Sean fishing for a poison that he doesn't get. We see a flip turn here. Shock, Alamola clicks flip turn on a Flamethrower as he's trying to catch that miss, as I think he's just trying to keep PP. I don't actually remember what Sean's set here was. U-turn does Rocky Helmet damage, bringing in the Chiyu on the Fortress, and this just claims a kill. We see the Zarude come in here as it clicks Petal Blizzard once again, picking off the Chiyu. Masquerada comes in here and just clicks Life Orb Shadow Ball, picking off the Zarude that I think a lot of people wouldn't have been too surprised if it was Scarfed. But Slowking comes in here. We see the Shadow Ball come off, doing 32, as Psychic Noise picks off the Meow. But here we just see Alamola come in. It clicks Flip Turn. We see the Yuxi come out. Sludge Bomb does not quite do enough, as Scarf Psychic Noise is able to clean up the game. And like I said, this is a good example of a game where Zarude can only do so much in terms of carrying by itself, but everything else on Sean's team just did not quite work into the matchup, and kind of everything went downhill after the really nice prediction by Wagon to click Terra Fairy Terror Blast on the Roaring Moon switching. So that just, for me, kind of encapsulates what Tera Zarude's issues have been, is that it itself as a mon is doing well, but the team as a whole isn't quite functioning, so therefore the team isn't doing as well, because it leads to a lot more tailored prep specifically towards Zarude, because there's kind of less fear around the supporting cast. So, and that was kind of the case across the board, and that's why Zarude just did not do as well. So like I was saying, we get to this DCL, and as you can see here, yeah, there's 5 of them this time, so I'm going to have to kind of scroll across at some point. You can see that Zarude went round 1 in 4 out of the 5 drafts, which was kind of surprising to me. I thought it would slip to round 2 at least twice, maybe even 3 times. So, we look at these teams. We see Zarude Deoxys Speed again, this time with an Alamola, which I believe was picked up at mid-season. We see a Cyclizar for removal, which is definitely better than Fortress, as we've seen previously. Or Cinderace. I do think Cyclizar is really nice in the metagame at the minute. And then you see the Terra Mismag paired with it again, but you also see a Raw Escadrille, which is an interesting mid-season pickup, trying to replicate the role of Iron Treads while having slightly more offensive prowess. So this is being recorded right as week 4's ended, so we haven't quite seen how these teams have fully planned out, but I kind of want to see how that goes. So this team has probably been one of the more positive ones so far. I think Zarude Deoxys Speed is kind of proving to be the partnership to go with, because Deoxys Speed has all the options that Zarude would appreciate, whether that be hazard support, whether that would be, you know, just a mixed cleaner, or like a breaker if needed, although Deoxys isn't exactly the world's greatest breaker. But it can do it sometimes. And I think having the backbone here of Albemarle Zapdos kind of suits it. It has a lot of natural speed around it, which means it doesn't need to run, say, the Trailblaze sets as often, meaning it can run like bulk up fat. So I'm interested to see kind of how this pans out for the rest of it, but it had started out well. I think the Albemola pickup should probably help this team too. We then get to this team by Armory, which should be 0-3. Yeah, if you know, you know. But we see Zarude Terapagos, which does kind of defeat the typical metrics in terms of you would think Zarude would want to go with natural speed. And by the time it got back to him round 3, Cinderace was already gone, so you're kind of left with two options, being Iron Bundle or Sneasler. So they went the bundle route, which is interesting. We see the Tinkaton there, solid piece to just kind of have. Landoi, you just kind of see a lot of Flavor of the Month bonds. You see another Salazzle here, interestingly enough, this time with Tera, which I actually think is quite good. And you see the Manaphy, which I believe was a mid-season edition, with the intention of just kind of using it for screens and things like that. But once again, I think this draft runs into the same issue of, in terms of win cons, you have like two. One of them is Raw Polished Terapagos, because Tailglow Manaphy does not win any matchup. Take Heart Manaphy does not win any matchup. Bundle can clean, but it's not gonna it's not gonna hit a point where it can set up and win an endgame. So it once again leads to Zarude having the same sort of pressure. And while yes, you do have breaking options, I don't think they're that amazing into the current metagame. You hardly ever see Life Force, Sheer Force Landers running around. It typically has some sort of fat involved in it. And Bundle, while yes, specs can be good, you're getting worn down by hazards really easily. Especially on a team like this, where to be able to get rid of a hazard, you have to break your own Terra Shell, which is just problematic. So, it's an interesting try on the Zarude idea, and I think, if there's a round 2 Terapagos there, I think you should take it. But you do have the issue of, if, say, something like Cinderace doesn't come back, you are stuck with them on like Bundle. And while Bundle can be interesting, it's just not quite of the same caliber of other natural speed mods. Then we get to this one here by Surfers, the third one you can see on your screen here. And once again, ticks a lot of the same boxes. Has that Garchomp as a starting piece, which I think is good for it, because giving it the spice, giving it the offensive backbone. The Cinderace is quite nice. This team was also torn apart a bit, by the way, guys. This did have a Latias on it for Healing Wish. That just became a mess for it. The Tinkaton's always been there, and then it was just a change up of the bottom 3. So, I do like the Blood Moon idea in terms of just trying to grab a special breaker for this team, because this team just didn't have it. And Quillfish for additional hazards, and the Avalugg has just kind of stayed there. Tera Avalugg for 2 points, you can't go wrong. It can be quite good sometimes. But once again, I'm not quite sure this does the same thing. Yes, you have the Garchomp. That can help. And yes, Cinder can break in very specific matchups. And Blood Moon, I think, if you can get it in enough times, it can definitely break. But you're very reliant on something like Trick Room Mesprit for that to happen. So I'm still not quite sure that a draft like this lets Zarude shine. But I am interested to see how it goes. Since the changes to this at mid-season, this team's not actually been brought yet. So it's just kind of a wait and see. Then the fourth one is another one I like quite a lot. You can see that for me, I think Zarude Deoxys Speed is the way to go. And while I'm not quite sure about the Sneasler on this team, you can see just a lot of patterns starting to develop. You can see Zarude, fast thing, just whatever reliable ground you can get. It seems to be Lander's Eye a bunch of the time at the minute. And then hazard removal, you see a Fortress on this again, similar to that Trick of Eye team from DPL. The Terra Mismag is a very popular partner with it at the minute, which I do like it as a partner. I'm just not quite sure about it having the consistency of it being a partner as it has. So we'll see how that goes. And yeah, another Terra Ampharos, interestingly. So like I said, I like 7 of the bones here. I'm not sure you actually needed the Sneasler. But at the same time, I'm not sure what you actually upgrade from not having the Sneasler, if you know what I mean. There is a case if this could have been Terra Okidogi instead, and just kind of change around the bottom a bit. And it kind of fulfills the same roles, because you don't need the speed Sneasler provides here, in my opinion. But it is a team that's doing pretty alright for itself. And it does kind of show what I'm talking about in regards to Zarude being formulaic. So it's really interesting because Zarude is kind of having the same issue that Raging Bolt has had in the past in terms of the teams itself are getting so formulaic to the point where they want Zarude to succeed, not necessarily the team to succeed. So we've seen Raging Bolt in previous events have get a lot of kills for itself personally, but the teams not do as well. And Zarude is having the exact same problem at the minute, and that is why Tera Torrent has kind of become the best Tera captain, and there's just no question. It's not a big three anymore, it's just the best one. And finally, we wrap up here talking about the this team here, which has only been used once, so it's kind of hard to get a gauge on. But once again, you see a lot of similarities. We see the Zapdos come back. We see Cinderace for natural speed, which just seems to be the partner for it. Which I do prefer Deoxys speed, but Cinderace is nice. Cinderace is nice. Another Lando Eye. The Iron Crown Almamola. I'm not quite sure if Crown is the correct steel type to have with it because, especially in a draft like this, where you have one rocker and court change, like, I get the idea of having Iron Crown for just that more special presence. And, you know, you have Carbink as well, but Carbink just kind of doesn't come a lot these days, unless it's running into, like, the Darkrai matchup. But I'm still not sure what is the best steel type to have on a Zarude team. If you're not at the point where you need removal, and that's where you kind of see the bunch of fortresses on this. Tinkaton could well be correct, just because the utility it has, and it being able to deal with them on, like, Meow, that sometimes just banded foul plays through a lot of Zarudes. And you're kind of seeing Tornadus do the same thing of banded foul play its way through Zarude. Or, you know, we've seen the Stellar option a few times as well from a couple of fast Tera captains, predominantly Torn. I think Keldeo is another one we've seen it with as well. So, not a crazy amount to say with this team. But I think the moral of the story here is we need someone, and I don't know, is that going to be DPL Season 10? But we need someone to kind of take more risks in regards to how to approach the Zarude draft. These are getting very safe, trying to fall into the exact same bracket, and it's just not quite working. And while, yes, there is more of an upturn here compared to what was seen in DPL, I just do not think that the heights of DCL2 are going to be reached anytime soon with the way that things are currently going. So I wonder will that change in Autumn Seasonal, if people will kind of try around with the Zarude structure and maybe, you know, play around with some of the mons that are on it and see if that works. Or if we are going to have to wait till DPL Season 10, where hopefully we don't just kind of see the exact same stuff again. To close out this discussion here, I have one last replay, and it's a bit of a more positive one. It's using that Tacticians team, which was the first team I mentioned here in the lot of 5, where Habita, you know, I think it makes sense to have him in this video. He is Mr. Zarude. Himself and Shadow are the two Mr. Zarudes in my opinion, so I think it makes sense to kind of have them both in this video. And he's taking on Roller K here, and this was played week 1, I believe. So let's hop into the game. Just to say at first, the Enam is Tera Stellar, to the surprise of absolutely nobody when there's a Zarude matchup, and the Zarude is Tera Flying. As we see the Zarude lead here into Jirachi. Great start for Hab. Overquill pivots in, not too surprisingly, as Hab clicks SD turn 1 and Terras. We see the Cinderace pivot in as Acrobatics does 90%. Petulant comes in on a Blaze boosted Pyro Ball, which only does 39, as the taunt comes off, trying to stop recover, but Nightshade picks off the Cinderace. Jirachi comes back in as we see the Zarude come in on the Stealth Rock turn. Overquill comes in. We've seen this script before, although he decides to click Knockoff first here to get rid of the black glasses. Hab SD's up as spikes are clicked by Roller K, as Throat Chop does a grand total of 24. Acrobatics picks off the Overquill. Enam comes in, unsurprisingly, because it wants to Tera Stellar Tera Blast, as Hab pivots into Cress, as it does a nice 21. Hab reveals to be Choice Scarf on the Cresselia, as Roller K tries to click Taunt. Psyshock is picking it off quite nicely. Moonblast does 50! Whew! As the Jirachi comes in, taking a Psyshock, which does nothing. Deoxys Speed comes in, taking Rocks and Spikes, As we see the Doom Desire as a positioning tool. Nightshade does 25, as U-Turn does 24, and it reveals the Rocky helmet on the Deoxys. See the Petron come in here on the Rotom Volt Switch, as Enan comes back in with the Doom Desire picking off the Petrorunt. We see Charles come in here. Charles the Cyclozar, aka a mon that I didn't really get to show enough of in the removal video because it didn't really fall into the removal category. So I'm glad I was able to kind of cover two birds with one stone here with a Habitat game and also a Cyclozar game, as you will see. It clicks Rapid Spin. It's a miracle. As Double Edge comes off doing a grand total of 19 on a T-Wave, as the Cyclozar is revealed to be Lumberry. We see a U-turn into Landorus on the Stealth Rock because Tera Zarude is terrifying. As we see another U-turn on the incoming Rotom Wash. Charles comes back in here, clicking Rapid Spin and doing 21 to Rotom, which Volt switches out into Tusk. We see a U-turn, to the surprise of absolutely nobody, as Zarude comes in on a Rapid Spin, as Rother is trying to get the speed boost. He goes for Ice Spinner, which is 49 here, as Acrobatics does 66 from the no item Zarude. Deoxys Speed comes in, taking a Mega Horn in the process, dying, but getting the helmet chip to the point where Cyclozar can come in and click Quick Attack to pick it off. Rotom comes back in here. We see a Double Edge do 58, not quite picking up the kill, as Discharge does 28 and gets the Para. Another Discharge is not quite able to pick off the Cyclozar, as we see a U-turn into the previously seen Scarf Cresselia. Jirachi comes out. Cresselia clicks Lunar Dance on a failed U-turn, as he goes into Cyclozar, which is able to clean up the game. Double Edge picking off the Jirachi, and finally the Enam is in no way able to take this hit. And yeah, like I said, covers a lot of stuff that I wanted to. I could have included this in the removal video, but, you know, I did know that I had the Tera Zarude video in the back of my mind. So I hope you guys have kind of enjoyed this rant here in terms of my feelings on Tera Zarude as a mon. But before you go, I have one last little thing. Some of you might remember that I made a bet in DCL2 with a certain Mr. King L5. And that bet did actually involve Zarude. I then doubled down on this bet after a few months hiatus because of me drafting it in DGBA. And while I did stop uploading that for reasons that I have mentioned previously, I don't think I can leave this any longer. And so, without further ado, here you go. Well, I can't believe I'm actually doing this. This shit's so late you can call me CTC. Shout out to L5 though. Alright, let's go. Okay, I lost the bet and so I gotta hop in on the track. Spitting about this grass-like demon, yeah, this thing is pretty whack. Full disclosure, I am not a rapper. This might be an epic fail, but DJ Bo is on the mic and now it's time to set sail. Talk about Zarude, man, where do I begin? Maybe talk about his benefit from terrestrialization. The options are terrifying, maybe it's terrifying. Water, fairy, poison, dark, who cares? You're fucking dying. Breaker, sweeper, cleaner, pivot, damn Zarude can do it all. Got so much utility that it can even solo stall. It's taunting all the haters. Then I'll core in this fucking verse. Jungle's keeping the burns and poisons. Default's fading or in a hurt. Got so many ways to win. The variety's undeniable. You know that this mon's good when it makes Petal Blizzard viable. Swords dancing, double attack. Safe to say this thing's a pet. Trailblaze does, boosted speed. I think we know the rest. Knock you off, knock you out. Crazy damage, my hit roll out. No wonder it can't be data. We're all its bitch. Now, this thing is pretty crazy. Its wins and kills can't be denied. Well, maybe it ain't quite as good when other threats ain't by its side. The fallout's steady from pretty wild. The star and roll, it can't quite catch. Figure out the right supporting cast and I'm sure that it will bounce back. In conclusion, this Zarude, goddamn, he's kinda strong. Why the fuck I back against this thing in favor of Teal Pawn? Yeah, that's something that I did. Excuse me the redness on my face, by the way. I don't know why my camera makes me look like this. But I hope you guys enjoyed something a little bit different. Let's just say that rapping is not my forte whatsoever. I grew up in a background in musical theater and not in rap. So, and songwriting wasn't great either. I tried that when I was younger and it was pretty shit. So, I hope you guys all enjoyed my little rant and rap about Tera Zarude. And shout out to L5 again. Sorry it took 9 months, but it is what it is. And don't place any stupid bets, kids. You'll pay the price. Anyways, guys, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.